Thank you all for being here. This session is the new wave of philanthropy. And what we would like to do is really share the journey of some of these unlikely players and the work they're doing. So I'm going to start with Didi. Didi, one of the questions I had for you as I was reading through your profile is, what are some of the things that you've noticed when you've made this foray into philanthropy? From being a global runway model to now sort of transitioning from the runway into sort of, should I say, the streets of giving. What has that been like, and what's that journey been like? And what would you like our audience to know about that?
Thank you for having me here. It's great to have the platform to speak about my work. It's interesting how I'm still seen as a runway model. Nothing with that, nothing wrong with that. But education has always been at the forefront of my life, coming from a very educated family. So the modeling was always done in concurrent with me studying. So it's a transition, I guess, I will have to deal with for quite a while, and that I'm happy with, because you can mix the two. My being in the spotlight gives me the opportunity to send out my message of giving, of education, and of transforming our communities.
Thank you. Qudus, my question is to you.
Yeah.
From your profile, we understand that you're a dancer and a visual artist. I know that some of your work now has transitioned just from the work you do to also doing more work in the community, working with young people and dancing with them. One of the things I always find could be challenging for someone like you is, because you're a solo artist, the work you do is sort of your own work, transitioning into this sort of space of giving, trying to reach out to people that are sort of more formal. How have you found that challenge, and how has that support been for you to be able to reach out and get even funding for the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think for me as an artist, it's been a very challenging last 3 years since we opened Qudus Center. Both on the idea of how do we navigate the spaces between my own personal work as an artist, which is solo-based and traveling and those kind of things, then also managing an institution that is about training and bringing young people up, and also working with the communities, which is quite localized and also institutionalized, meaning that I cannot just make personal decisions anymore, and just somebody called me from the US in Brazil, for example, they called me for an 8 weeks residency. I'm like, 8 weeks? How do I do that? So it's like, there's certain things I just cannot do anymore, because I'm more focused on a local level now. And at the beginning, we didn't write any proposal at all, because it's not something that existed before in this community, in this country. How can we begin a creative organization that is using performance and dance as its own tools for social engagement? So we didn't write any proposal. We didn't know how to even communicate that to people. So what we did at the beginning was just liquidating our savings and just going into it, myself and my wife, and started working with young people, training. And the whole of 2014, I was getting fat because I wasn't really practicing. I was just throwing out information, giving. And by 2015, we knew that we needed to change something. So we started moving more into the communities and working with communities in Iwaya, in Yaba, in Festac, in Lagos Island. And all of this is as a way for me to also realize what is it exactly that we're doing. And it took us like 3 years before we could come up with something that looks like a brochure. Like to say, what do you do? This is an idea of what we do. And for me, it's now we've broken it down into 4. So we called it the Qudus Acts. ACT meaning ACTS. A for artistic projects, C for community development projects, T for talent building, and S for services. That's where we make our money from. So we don't really function as an NGO per se, even though we are registered as an NGO, but we function as a social enterprise, meaning we actually offer services, then whatever we get from that, we throw it back into our projects. So as of now, we don't really have a serious funding system set up.
So one of the things that, I know from my work and working in the nonprofit world is for you to sort of get funding, you have to have a lot of times evidence-based, you have to have research, you have to have a way of tracking, accountability. How can a formalized organization like this help people like you or more people that are individuals trying to get involved in community work, but also trying to access funding?
Mostly, one of the things we decided at the beginning was that when we came back, we said, okay, the way we do art in France and the way I've been touring about, it's not going to be very interesting for this community, for this society. So what is it that we need to do? We needed to think about a basic problem that we want to solve using dance, using arts. And then we realized that I studied here. I did all my secondary school here, so I know the system very well. And I also know the sort of effort and fight, really, I had to go through to be allowed to do what I want to do dance. And so I didn't want a situation whereby more young people will have to go through that same fight. So one of the questions my parents asked me when I wanted to go into dance was, okay, you want to go into dance, what school are you going to go to? What institution is out there for you to follow? And I knew I didn't have any answer then because there was none. So my responsibility is also to then use that as a way to create an avenue for others who are going to use us as a way to tell people that, oh, if he can do it, then we should be able to do it. So we focus essentially on young people, meaning between the age of 16 to like 25. And this is like almost 65% of our population. And generally, because when you leave high school in Nigeria, generally, I'm not saying specific cases, generally you leave school between the age of 16 to 18 or 19 if you are late. Then between the ages of 17 to at least 21, not everybody gets to go into university directly. So there is at least an age gap of 3 to 4 years of waiting period. And this waiting period is long for someone to just be without doing anything because he's not employable, but at least we can engage him or her during that period. So that's where we wanted to enter into that kind of market and say, okay, there is these young people who naturally are also very interested in the arts, in dance, in music, in comedy, and that's where we started providing stuffs for. And now to convince people that this is something worthy, it's quite difficult because you need data, you need to give numbers, you need to be able to say, this is the amount of people, but really, in this country, do we really have data for that?
Thank you. We'll leave that on that note and come back to this. Amadou, I want to ask you, because your philanthropic journey on the continent has come in through a big brand, a global brand, but not necessarily a brand that is well known on the continent. So how have you been able to work with institutions, individuals, with the NBA as a sports brand on the continent, once again, because it's an unlikely player from what people typically expect?
Thank you. First of all, great to be here. I want to thank everybody for the invitation. I think before I talk about the NBA, actually the journey started way before the NBA. And I'm just listening to Didi and Qudus here. The common theme is each of them using the platform they have to really empower and impact. For me, and then listening to his story, he just started something, out of instinct and also a desire to contribute. You know, it's very similar to a story I have. Before I joined the NBA, I started a foundation called SEED. It's Sports for Education and Economic Development. And it was really inspired, born out of my own journey, you know, how I started, how I went to the US on a basketball scholarship. I just met by pure chance a Peace Corps volunteer who went back to the US and talked to a coach that, hey, you know, he met this tall African kid, and then a week later I get a full scholarship letter, and this coach have never seen me play. He just knew that I was 6'8". So that's how I showed up in Washington, D.C. way back. But then as I journey in the sports world and all the wonderful people I've met and the access that it was giving me, I'm meeting, I mean, I'm talking legends like Coach John Thompson at Georgetown, Patrick Ewing, all these guys that you watch from afar. Then it just talked to me about the power of sport, you know, how sport could be used as a tool, because it has certainly given me everything. You know, that's how I got my education paid for. And then we started to help other young people from the continent follow in those footsteps because the demand was there. So other coaches asked. So at some point I used to think that there has to be a way to coordinate or kind of bottle up all this magic that's coming from sports to really contribute to my passions, which was Africa, its youth and its development. You're talking in the early 90s, there was a lot of perception issues. That was not, nobody was talking about Africa rising at the time. So I just saw that there was a way to utilize sport as a conduit. So we started SEED in 98. SEED is going to be 20 years old this in 2018. That is really, you know, that was the precursor for the work I'm doing now at the NBA. And I worked for one of the teams before I joined the league. I worked for the Dallas Mavericks for 12 years. So during that time, I was traveling back and forth on the continent, you know, doing camps everywhere, and just, you know, through SEED, figuring out ways to impact young people. To your point, I always thought also that if we were going to have any chance at development, we had to focus our efforts and energies on the youth of the continent. And I thought that education was the #1 priority. And for me, through my own experience, through basketball is a medium we use to make sure we entice young people, you know, to tell them, okay, you want to play, but first you're going to go do your homeworks. And that's just how you, I guess, how you get kids to do important things, you know. So in terms of how it ties into my work now at the NBA, we are a league that has, you know, social responsibility for us is really in our DNA, giving back to communities. So we partner with global and local NGOs to serve as a megaphone. You know, we are, for example, a founding member, partner of the UN Foundation's Nothing But Net anti-malaria organization. We partner, for example, with ExxonMobil and Africa here in Abuja in a program called Power Forward. It's all geared towards teaching young people, raise their awareness, you know, around their environment, their well-being, and make sure that we have an influence in them making positive life choices. So the partnerships are extremely important, and I can go on and on in terms of the partners we have on the continent as we, you know, push forward our agenda to grow the game of basketball, but it's really beyond what's taking place on the court. Basketball is just a hook for us. You know, we partner with education NGOs. We go to conferences like this. I was 2 months ago in Abidjan speaking with a group of young agropreneurs. And before the conference, actually, somebody in the audience was asking me, you know, what does an executive from a global professional sports league doing, what is it doing at a conference about agriculture? So we are a megaphone. You know, we want to, those people were looking for ways to make agriculture cool. And I think sports and our brand can really lend a hand in terms of, you know, associating and attracting that. One of our players from Senegal, Gorgui Dieng, is an avid farmer. He's 26 years old, playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves, but he wants to be a commercial farmer, and he already started in Senegal. As in Africa, we are talking about pushing the agriculture agenda. I think he could be a good ambassador, and this is why we like to, tell these kind of stories. Bismarck Biombo is another one of our players from the Orlando Magic. He's from the DRC. He's building schools. He's passionate about education. He's building school. The first one opened in Goma on September 4th, and he intends to replicate that in many countries.
Amadou is the right megaphone, so for those of you that want to partner, make sure you get on his platform. Thank you for really contextualizing your journey. Didi, coming back to you, when we had our conversation, you said you registered your organization in 2014. Before then, I'm sure you started doing your work. What was the prompting that said, okay, I needed to formalize this, I needed to create structures around this, and how has that journey been, and how have you sort of done that, and now you're here to have this conversation with us?
Yeah, thank you. My journey with the work I do with the Didi and Friends Foundation started really very casually, from being exposed as a young kid to going to private schools at the era way before democracy in South Africa. I had the privilege to see between the government schools and the private schools the benefit of getting a private education and knowing that I was privileged. At that time, there were strikes, boycotts, and kids weren't going to school. And so I was still managed to go to school, and that on its own was an awakening within me. Fast tracking to adulthood, you become very comfortable in your little bubble of privilege and forget where you came from. So I decided to go back to my township church where I grew up, where they have a preschool, and I started volunteering and offering them assistance with the basics. And through that, I realized that also the teachers needed some upskilling. So paying towards the teachers' upskilling so that they can give the kids better education. And that has now grown to me working with 5 orphanages and community centers around Gauteng and in the Western Cape. And the whole idea is that we want to see kids that are holistic, that play basketball, that are into the arts, but most importantly, that are well nourished and also are able to get into the class, concentrate, and be able to produce the results. So we have started a program, it's a collaboration with another foundation that has been in the space of education for 11 years. So they give Saturday and holiday programs, which the kids get extra lessons from what they are getting at school. This is predominantly government school kids. So just to give you a perspective, private schools in South Africa or independent schools they form 6% of the 25,000 government schools that are there. So it's a minority, it's a big number of kids that don't get the privilege of one-to-one, of being encouraged and all. So we are trying to fill that gap. And so it's an ongoing journey which needs dedication, which needs help from people like this in this room to hear what we're trying to do and collaborate with us. And am I answering your question?
Yes. I do have a follow-up question for you. So how are you dealing with the issue of reporting, data collection, really trying to make sure the world understands what you're doing, and other people that are in this room can actually collaborate with you and write a check? How are you, how are you doing that? How are you sort of making sure that there is access to the information that you're creating?
Thank you. So I registered the Didi and Friends Foundation as a non-profit company to formalize it. I realized that I couldn't do it casually the way I was doing it, that people need credibility. They want to see where their money is going to, and they want to see the impact that it's doing to the communities. So hence the registration of the Foundation, and also having structures to see that during our holiday programs, the donors can come and be with us and see what the kids are learning. And right now we're working towards award ceremonies and seeing what the kids have achieved. We have kids who at the beginning of the program were getting 35%. And towards the end of the year, they've gone up to 95%. And this is through our interventions of Saturday and holiday programs. So we are always trying to find new ways of improving ourselves, of enriching the kids in different ways. We've got book clubs. We have...
Sorry, just quickly. So the people that have supported you, have you had to provide any data or anything? People have just sort of, in a way, said, we're happy with what you're doing, and they've been able to write it.
Yes, so they get 3 reports annually to show as to what the improvement is, where the money is going, and most importantly, how the kids are benefiting.
The reason why I wanted to push that is because there are quite a number of unlikely players that have amazing platforms that I know would like to start to do this type of work, and it's important for people to understand and start to contextualize the way to get other people to support the work they do. So thank you for letting us know exactly what you do, especially in the areas of reporting.
I believe in honesty, being upfront, and for people to be able to see that this is it's a partnership. It's not only you putting out your money, but it's more we want you to form part, we want you to form relationships with those kids and be able to say, I saw this kid going from grade 8 and now they're in university and hopefully one day they'll be engineers, and coming back and working within the organizations that maybe if it's a big corporation that they're working in. So we definitely are looking at that. It's very important that there is that follow through.
Thank you. Qudus, I'm going to come back to you and pick up on something you said about that waiting period between when students graduate from high school and they go to university. I was on a panel a few months ago where we were talking about the education systems. And so in talking to most of you, the work you're picking up is almost sort of this gap in our education systems. And one of the things that's really important is the fact that we don't have enough institutions when it comes to tertiary institutions for the number of graduates we're producing from high school. So we have to create more and more opportunities from a vocational perspective, from arts perspective. We have to create multiple tracks. And that's a space where the government doesn't have, the government is overwhelmed, and there needs to be extra capacity of people like you picking that up, that space, that vacuum that has been created. Because if we don't have these multiple tracks for people, the vacuum that is created, there are quite a number of things that the devil can find for. The idle hands are the devil's workshop, so there's quite a number of things that can happen in that space. How were you overwhelmed? I mean, you mentioned the 3 years that you and your wife were working on this. How has putting structure around your work eased some of that overpowering and overwhelming? And how do you believe more people like you, solo artists, people that have beautiful platforms, can help fill that gap and also make sure that's structured?
Yeah, the first thing is that I think in this country, on a large scale as well, a number of young people, it's actually when I started working with young people that I began to also see the level of decay, social decay, if I could say, and also that has been caused by the kind of education we have in this country at the moment. A number of young people after high school, they don't even have any interest in furthering. All they want to do now is to make it. Like that's how bad it is. And one thing that we've done is we've been able to say, okay, there is a kind of there's something that's not going right with the university system, especially for people of talent. When you have talent in this country, you are not being supported in a way whereby even your going to university is as a way of furthering the development of this particular talent that you have. And I remember very clearly that when I was in high school, the only thing that made me wake up every day, I want to go to school, was because I was part of the dance club. It wasn't even because I was a science student. So I knew that if we don't harness, if we don't put the talent of the people, whether it's in literature or in dance or in painting or in whatever, if we don't make it as important as what they're studying, there's always going to be a deficit in that thing they're studying, because they're going to study it just because you said I should study it. They haven't gotten to that point where they found it very, very important and very necessary for their own individual growth. So in Nigeria presently, there's a number of young people who don't believe in the university system anymore. And that's a shame. It's a shame. And on top of that, in my company at Qudus Center at the moment, we have about 5 people who are actual graduates of theater arts, who after 2 months of working with us, and they're like, I feel like I just wasted 4 years in that school, because I was never, these are dance majors, and they have never actually gotten the amount of information they've gotten from us in the 4 years of them being in those universities. So for me, it is important that the people of education also get to understand what is happening in town, and they can find a way to merge between what's happening outside and what's happening inside, so they can encourage the young people more and more to have a reason to want to come study there. I know I've missed your question.
No. I think for me, one of the things I was saying is, when you look at the structures that you're putting in place, how is this now eased some of the sense of overwhelming that you had before, but also to what can other people do to sort of say, okay, you have a theater track, you have this track, how can other people create other tracks to fill these vacuums?
Yeah, and also the other thing is that it's not very easy, because I'm doing this now because I got to a point in my career where I can decide to come do this. So when artists don't do this, I don't blame them, really. I know
Made you realize how difficult it was?
Yeah, because it's really, really, really difficult. When I tell you the challenges, you don't even imagine it. It's not enough to just say, okay, now we have a dance school, come. They're asking you, how about transport there? How about lunch? Because these are basic problems that people face. We have a dance studio that can, if I'm traveling, our dance studio can be there empty for 2 months. Nobody comes. Because unfortunately, my dance studio is at Ikoyi. Most of the people we work with are on the mainland. If I find a space at the mainland, I'll be the first to move. You know, that's the kind of thing you need to think about. People need money for transport, not even to pay school fees. They don't even have it anyway.
People can't pay for the dance school, so the dance school is free.
It has to be free. That's why we need.
So it's 100% subsidized.
Exactly.
So how are you being subsidized?
Yeah, at the moment, this year was the first time we had a seed funding from the Lagos State government, who offered us 20 million naira to be able to continue what we're doing. But this is 2 years of us, giving just our own personal funding. Meanwhile, one other thing that we now came up with is to say, okay, when people call us for jobs like what we did yesterday, we make sure that we give a service that is unparalleled in this society at the moment. And we also make sure that we charge people more than whoever else is charging. So that if you pay me 20 million naira, I can pay the artist 5 million naira, and the remaining 15 million naira is for us to function for the entire year. So that's how we've been working up on this moment. But of course, it's getting to a point where even that model is beginning to weigh us down, because now it's as if we are focused more now on the services more than the impacts that we really, really want to make.
So basically, it's about finding a balance. Can you give us a number? How many students are you servicing today?
At the moment, we have prominently working with us. We have about 17 dancers and 6 musicians. But aside that, we do community programs, we do youth development projects, and we work with schools.
Thank you. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And Amadou, my question to you is, we met originally because of the work you do with music and the MBA. Music is a powerful tool on the continent. I know that a lot of musicians are doing things as an individual. When you look at the work you've done with a lot of the musicians, how can we bring sort of sports and music into sort of more mainstream philanthropy on the continent? What are some of the advice that you have?
Again, not to toot our NBA horn, but basketball and the NBA happen to be the perfect place where music and fashion and sport intersect. Our players are wannabe designers, they want to be musicians, and those musicians want to be players, So the way the world works right now, essentially you have a global teenager, no matter where they are from. They listen to hip hop or R&B, they follow the NBA or the EPL, and we have a league where more than 30% of our players come from outside the US. So what we do from a community development standpoint with our clubs, when I was at the Dallas Mavericks, we were very involved in some of the most disadvantaged areas in the city of Dallas. We went and built homes, we painted schools, our players volunteered their time through a program at the time that was called Read to Achieve, to just give back. And that's what we do on a global basis. In the summer, I talked about Gorgui Dieng earlier, he doesn't go to Miami or Cabo to spend his summer. He goes back to his village, his Kébémer in Senegal, to farm. Bismarck comes back, Luc Mbamute goes back to Cameroon, he's doing camps, he's inspiring young people. They have friends in those countries who are musicians, and they all, move together. I think that common bond that exists, what we do is just help them create an enabling environment to allow them to really do what they're passionate about, which is trying to send back the lift that had carried them to where they are. I think our focus is just that, being that connector. We are not education specialists, we are not farmers, but we can, make farming interesting. When I talk about the amplifier or megaphone, that's what it is, because musicians are interested in what we're doing. When we work together, we brought Ice Prince in our All-Star Weekend in New Orleans to perform for our guests that came from across the continent, and happened to know that he's passionate about basketball. So, he was in his element, met the players. Then when we come back on the continent, it becomes so much easier to connect. So in everything we do, those partnerships, those authentic partnerships, are the reason why we are able to, expand our footprint, for example, on the work we are doing, focus on youth. Because at the end of the day, my number one priority is to get as many young people, boys and girls, to bounce a ball. And I think why I was excited about moving back to the to Africa after 21 years in the US, was that opportunity to impact the youth across the continent based and from the learning from my own experience. So music, fashion, sports go hand in hand. And I thought the title of this panel, when you talk about unusual players, is those areas that in Africa we generally have overlooked, because nobody in my family have ever watched me play basketball growing up, because it was just something you did, But now we have to realize that this is serious industry, and the big boys are coming. One of the biggest issues we have is a lack of venues, for example, across the continent. And people are now very busy figuring out how to build these venues, because there's a lot of entertainment revenues that could be generated from all these big acts coming to Africa, all these big games coming to Africa. We did two actually on August 5th in Johannesburg. These are just beginnings. So all the entertainment for me is a huge opportunity to drive, interest in philanthropy because you get all these players from all around the world in multiple sports. They love to come back to give back to where they are from.
Thank you. Didi, what would you like big organizations to know about giving and partnering with people like you in the field? And I'll give you an example. So every year, whenever you sort of open the newspaper, there is a huge grant from DFID to do girls' education. There's a huge grant from the World Bank. There's a huge grant maybe from an individual foundation. How would you like to see these funds trickle down to the community, especially as new players in this field?
Yeah, so I think there's a great space for everybody to take part in what we're doing and for collaborations. If we can see kids moving from high school and being able to be comfortable enough that they have bursaries to go to university, having that support would mean a great deal from organizations that are in this room.
We'll call them the usual suspects because you guys are unusual suspects. So from the usual suspects.
Yes, from the usual suspects. I've listened to many great speakers from the Development Bank, Black Umbrella, with the new entrepreneurs, funding of the new entrepreneurs. So there's many great talents out there, and I guess we are highlighting and harnessing their skills from an early age so that by the time they get there, they're given the platform and the opportunity to say, here we are, and they'd be ready to take on. They'd have the skill, they'd have the knowledge. I think one of the panelists earlier on was speaking how, basic things like CVs and presentation, that they need to be ready. So we are filling that gap of making sure that we are nourishing holistic kids who are able to know how to present themselves in front of audience, how to dress appropriately, how to conduct themselves in interviews. And by the time they reach university or apply for jobs, that they can be given the opportunity afforded to all those, compared to those who come from more privileged backgrounds.
Thank you. Qudus, I have, my question to you is very similar. So you have this grant from Lagos State. You're also doing sort of command performances as their services. So one of the things that, my question, two things. One is around sustainability of this model you're building. And of course, you're in experimentation stage. The second thing is the same question I asked Didi. What would you like formal grant-giving organizations to know about the usual suspects, to know about new and unusual suspects and how they can support you?
Yeah, I think in the last 3 years that we've been experimenting with different stuffs, one thing I've realized is that we have applied for a number of funding from philanthropists, and it's always very difficult to get funding from those established. It's easier for me to get money from the Lagos State government or from British Council or from Institut Français or Goethe Institute, than foundations, because the kind of model or the kind of solution we are proposing to known problems, it's almost impossible to think about it as a solution. Just like you said the other time, just the idleness or the lack of engagement for young people, we don't actually connect it to Boko Haram, for example. We don't necessarily make the link between providing, yes, you cannot provide jobs for young people, but if you don't provide engagement for them, they're going to become a problem that you want to solve afterwards. So why not solve the problem before it becomes a problem? And it's not abstract. It's very basic. I've taken young people from Oworo, young people from Bariga, from Oshodi, from Ikotun, that we now work with, that we've now traveled the world with. And now they are going to become champions in those communities now. And I go to those communities to see what they are doing there. I'm not even giving them anything beyond what I've given them. I'm just going back and I'm seeing how much in 2 years, in 3 years, it has changed their entire perception of dance, their entire perception of what they do. Because at the beginning, it's always very difficult in a society where you don't find the value in what you do necessarily, up until you see an example. And that example changes everything for you. So for me, the ripple effect of what we're doing is beyond what I can say. This year, we organized something called Dance Gathering, where we brought dancers from Kaduna, from Lagos, from Abuja, from Bamako, from Tunisia, from a number of Nigerian states as well. And even before they went back to Kaduna, Abuja, and these kind of spaces, they were already telling me that these 2 weeks of just being here in this gathering with this amount of people who have the same passion, the same vision as me, has changed my perception entirely. And now they're writing me back, sending me a report of what they're doing in Kaduna. I've never been to Kaduna before. I'm going to Enugu and Jos this year for dance gathering next year as well. For me, this is just little impact that you don't even know where it goes afterwards. So for me, it's important that the usual funders begin to know that all the problems we have in this country is not about malaria and headache. There are other big problems that will give us better headache tomorrow that we need to solve now.
So are you saying no more bed nets? You want to actually see real people working with real people?
We need more bed nets, but we also need more people working with young people who have talents.
Right, thank you. So actually, on a follow-up to that, how are you gathering this information? How are you curating, for lack of a better word, this information that you're getting, the people in Kaduna, this impact? Because once again, that's also part of what we need to understand is how can you convert this impact into more sustainability?
Social media, one word. Because these kids, naturally, they're all there. You go to Instagram, they're all doing music cover of Olamide's songs, of Wizkid, because that's the only platform they have.
Sure.
So what we're doing is to create more platform that is actually more beneficial and also gives return. Because you making covers of Olamide's music on Instagram is not going to give you anything beyond likes. So we are also trying to re-engineer that thinking that apart from doing activations for brands or dancing for Wizkid or musicians, there are also other ways at which you can enhance your talent. And that's where the talent development thing becomes very, very important. Because just like she said, tell them to apply for something. People are sending you one line. And you say, send me a CV. And they send you one line. And you're like, that's all you've done? Say, yeah, I also dance for Wizkid. I also... And that for me is a shame. Because the skill set that is to be built is beyond dance. If it was all about dance, I wouldn't be doing this now. It's about leadership training, because without your leadership skill, there's no way you're going to gather people you want to work with them. So it's about entrepreneurial skill. It's about communication skill. There's so many things that we need to work on. It's not just teaching dance. Teaching dance is the least because they already have it.
So, thank you so much. So one of the things for me that I'm taking away from this is that the way we curate data and the way we talk about data actually needs to change. And therefore, for the work you're doing, you don't necessarily need to commission a report, but what you probably need is to be able to curate some of the social media information that you're getting, and that has to be able to go into a proposal and mean something for the people that are sort of giving those grants. So thank you. I know we're going to open up to the audience shortly, but before then I just wanted to ask the issue around the work that you're all doing around sustainability, and how do you see that going forward? I know Qudus has addressed that, but I would like to hear from you just briefly, and then we'll open up to the audience.
Again, for us, it's all about partnerships. Obviously, I mean, talking from two hats here, it's a different story with the NBA. I think we come and invest ourselves to, find ways to have young people use the values of the game of basketball to grow up to become, better contributors to their communities, to the point you are making. And if I hear you correctly, dance is just a hook. For us also, the game is just a hook. What we're doing is not really about finding that next Hakeem Olajuwon or Dikembe Mutombo, but it's really about getting young people through sport, to the values, the intrinsic values of sports, which teach them about work ethic. Teaching them to basketball is a quintessential team sport. That what you do, have a big impact on how successful the team is going to be. So push that, sense of responsibility towards your teammates and at large to your community. Respect. Everything starts with respect. So I think, focusing on those values is what carries us, through the journey here. We seed, obviously, so non-profit, and just similar to what you were saying earlier. When I started it 20 years ago, there was no 10-year business plan. We just felt that, okay, I see something here, let's just do it. So 20 years later, we're still trying to now figure it out. Obviously we were registered as an NGO in the States, but now trying to, put more structure and really take it to the next level. In terms of sustainability, you build partnerships also, so sometimes you get lucky and get the right partners, but what is really unbelievably necessary is the commitment. No matter what, this thing must go on. But coming to platforms like this to share the experiences with like-minded people also is a great start, I think.
So actually, Didi, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it to the audience, but I'll let you have the last word, just so we get some questions in.
I loved what Your Highness Queen Sylvia said yesterday, that we need to move from being charity, which is short-term, but moving towards philanthropy, which is long-term. And that's what I have awakened up to in my foundation, is that we need, instead of just giving them food and clothing, yes, they still need that support, but giving them the education for them to be able to have the knowledge to carry on, teaching them to fish, as Ms. Titi said the other day. It's important. So with that, then there's sustainability, then there's credibility, then there's moving forward into, them changing the whole community. You see, if you educate one kid, for our program it takes $500 to put through a kid through the primary school, $1,000 for the high school. And so we all know in this room, we spend it without thinking about it. So my whole thing is saying, in which way can you contribute, even if it's one thing, if it's to one person, you're changing a whole family's way of doing things. So in that way, there is sustainability, and the ones to follow are going to get a better footing.
Thank you. We have time for a few questions. If there are any questions, please let us know who you are, what you do, and if you can direct your question.
Thank you very much, panelists. My name is Sarah Maka from the One Campaign, and the One Campaign has sort of mastered the art, if I may, of bringing strange bedfellows together. As an example, we were doing some work on girls' education, and we took it to Big Brother Niger, and we got 26 million viewers who were engaged, at least for the first time in many cases, on girls' education. And so I really applaud what you guys do, and I really do think to the rest of the room, this is the face of the future. I do think that bringing those people who don't usually speak our same language of philanthropy in the same room really does target our young people especially, and really brings an interesting kind of change. So my question to you as a converted is, what do you believe you need, to each of the panelists, to take your job, your work to the next level? Because at the end of the day, when we do this, we really do want to see, we're trying to create a new world. So the first question is, what do you believe you need to do to take your work to the next level? And the second question is, what does success look like? When do you believe you go out of business? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take your question as well.
Hi, thank you. Yvonne Moore from More Philanthropy. So first of all, Q, thank you so much. The performance is amazing. Amadou, I have a question for you. I'm very curious. NBA Africa, NBA USA, I would love to know if the players from the US and the players from Africa ever have a chance, from any of the countries, ever have a chance to just talk about issues, social justice issues, all kinds of issues, because as you know, there's quite a few things in the news right now in the US around the national anthem, and it made me wonder if they ever get a chance to just chat.
Okay, we'll take more questions.
Hello, good morning. My name is Ahmed Alaga. I work for Teach for Nigeria. And basically, we have a fellowship program that encourages young Nigerians to teach now and lead later. My question is, we've been saying a lot about engaging young people. But I think the greater question is, these young people have a story, and that story is from the community. How do you, in all the work you do, foster your activities such that the community is also carried along? Because I think if you try to educate young kids, learning does not happen alone in the classroom. It involves the community. Working with kids, young individuals, giving them skills. I remember the issue you raised about providing transportation. I mean, if you really want to think sustainably about it, you also want to think, how do you engage the community that these young individuals come from, so that they can also support the work that you do? Because I think that will be really sustainable.
Thank you. So just so that we do this well, what we'll do is we'll let you answer the work. What do you need to get to amplify your work? And then you'll do the MBA, and what does success look like? We'll go to Didi. So we'll start with you.
Okay, at the point where we are, this year, 2017, has been an incredible year. We started something called the Q Tribe. And the Q Tribe is as a result of the 3 years of work we've done. So all the people we've trained in the last 3 years, we get at the best out of them, and we call them the Q Tribe. So the whole idea of the Q Tribe is having, we call it a team of rebels and misfits and people who are natural change makers. So the piece we did yesterday is called Rainmakers, and Rainmakers was actually created for the opening of TED Global this year in Arusha. So this year has been a year of, we focused so much on bringing all of those energies together into one, which now thinking about it at the end of the year, I'm like, I'm guilty that we've not made as much impact, but I know it's not true. But I'm just talking about the way we made impact, going to communities and going to Festag last year. And now I realize that each year we actually focus on a particular goal. Like 2014 was training. 2015 was community. And 2016 and 17 has been more about putting the communities and the people trained together and creating original works out of them. I think from next year, I want a situation whereby we can do the three at the same time. Now, one of the reasons why we've not done that is because...
Let me sort of try to bring this in. What will help you bring those three things together?
The reason why we haven't done that is because we usually focus our resources on one thing, which is not so much, right? So if we have more resources, we will be able to do, because doing also means that these 17 people
Can you
that we
translate
have.
what does resources mean?
Okay.
Give us a number.
A number.
Give a number. There are people here with checkbooks.
Okay, from the last proposal we made, what we need was about 200 million naira.
Now
Which
it's
is
out
not
there.
so much, right?
See, you said it. Thank you.
Because what that means for us is that these 17 dancers and 6 musicians that we work with, for the moment, we cannot employ them on a monthly basis. So we do project-based. But if we can employ them on a monthly basis, what that means is that even the training programs and the community development program, they are the ones that also we channel into those spaces because they are with us on a
So
full time.
Qudus, we're going to go to the next couple of questions, but 200 million is the number. People are going to meet up with you afterwards and write some checks.
Thank you.
The NBA, let's talk about the NBA Africa Convo.
Yes, so we are from a league where from the top down, we encourage our players, our team officials to speak out and really be involved and talk about the important issues. And I think throughout the history of the league, we've seen that. So early on this summer, obviously in the US, there's a lot happening there, but our players have been very vocal in terms of denouncing what they don't agree with and being leaders in their communities, not just through what they're saying, but also their actions. I think a number of them, your question about national anthem in the US, and I think probably one of the reasons why you haven't seen yet, maybe NBA players taking a knee, because throughout the course of the year, they have platforms and opportunity to always voice, their opinions and their displeasure about whatever the current issue of the day is. So we're very, encouraging of our players, our teams, and starting from our commissioner to get involved, in the communities and take a leadership role.
Thank you. And Didi, what does success look like?
I think first of all, I'd like to say the quote that I like by Oprah, where she says, "Life is a reciprocal exchange. To move forward, you have to give back." And I think first and foremost, if we start thinking of we and other people and not just individuals, we can gain much more success. Success for me would be to see the kids that we are funding who are in grade 4, one day graduating in university and being part of the private sector, being entrepreneurs, being captains of industries. And for also another part is for more people to be awakened to the fact that giving is not only for philanthropies, that all of us can do it. That, it's a series of small things done with love and with caring that we can all form part of giving. It's not a matter of that it must be billionaires, that every ordinary human being is there to be able to make a difference.
Thank you all so much for your time and for being here, and thank you for participating and really coming with your full self. If you could all please just join me in giving them a round of applause. That's all the time we have for now. Thank you very much.